All signs are pointing to this, as Jaden Springer, a player in the Celtics rotation, has been getting some more playing time in recency bias, and with the trade rumors heating up and the trade deadline getting closer, could he be a name to look to possibly be moved, as the Celtics still are looking to address some holes in their roster, dealing with some injuries and inconsistent play in the recent days. We're going to be diving into all of that and looking at some potential upgrades the Celtics could add into their system and more in this episode of Celtics Digest. I'm Bruce Veliz. Without further ado, though, if you guys do enjoy the content on the channel, we do ask if you guys do hit that subscribe button. If you are part of the 75% that are watching these videos that are not subscribed, to hit that button to help us get to our goal of 6,000 subscribers before the start of the new year. Without further ado, though, let's dive into the video at hand. Make sure to grab a snack. And like I said in the introduction, we're going to be diving in and discussing something that is interesting to look at, and Jaden Springer, as all the signs are kind of pointing to a possible move involving his name, as we've seen the Celtics giving Springer some recent play over the last couple of days, with Springer kind of falling in the rotation initially to the start of the season, and with him kind of being the only tradable asset this team really has in a contractable standpoint, he is going to be the name that is going to be thrown around with rumors. So we're going to be looking at some potential upgrades that the Celtics could get to kind of fill in some holes that they've been having with some inconsistencies and with some injuries. So like I mentioned in the introduction, we want to look at the Celtics salary cap. We can see that obviously the starting five is locked up and cannot be traded with these restrictions. Jayson Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Derrick White, Jrue Holiday, Kristaps Porziņģis, Al Horford, and Jaden Springer are the only two Celtics who are on their last year of their deals, with everyone else either being locked up long term or having an extension kicking in next season. And that's what makes it difficult for the Celtics to be able to do trades as well, added on to the fact that they're also in the second apron, which gives the Celtics some restrictions. They cannot aggregate salaries, which means they cannot combine salaries to get players. They also can only do one-for-one trades, and if they do trade out a player, they can only take back equal or less value in the contract for said player. So for the Celtics, many of these players are untradeable, or if they are tradable, the Celtics aren't going to get back the value that they would need in said trade to kind of accommodate for the player. It would be the Celtics basically helping out that team, and the Celtics getting draft capital in return. And the Celtics don't need draft capital, as they want to contend and they want to compete. So for this Celtics team, like I mentioned, if they are looking to move and add any upgrades to this team, Springer is one of those guys who could be one of those tradable contracts. If we want to look at Springer, in recent 2 games, he has not played, but over the last 5, he has been given some time, specifically versus the Chicago Bulls on the 19th, in which Springer has succeeded versus the Bulls even to date to last season, where he's made some magnificent impacts. And versus the Bulls in this game, he did not do the greatest on the offensive side, but defensively, he was able to lock in and showcase his skills. And we've talked about Springer many times on this channel, and I kind of made the comment that I feel like he is very similar to Aaron Nesmith from a couple of seasons ago, where he's very good on the defensive side of the ball, but offensively needs a place where he can kind of unlock that potential, a role where he's gifted 10 to 15 minutes a night to kind of figure out where he can find himself offensively. And once he figures that out, then he can kind of be an impact player. And for Springer, over these last couple games and since his tenure in Boston, he hasn't been able to really unleash that potential. He's been getting 2-3 minutes here or there, part of that stay ready group, which he's been able to maintain and still be an impactful defender when his number is called upon. But offensively, he has been able to grow and showcase what his true potential could be to find himself a long-term home in Boston. And with him being on a $4 million contract and him being a restricted free agent in which other teams can offer him a contract and the Celtics would have to match, it's going to be very difficult for the Celtics to retain a player like Jaden Springer on this roster, specifically with teams knowing the Celtics are in the second apron. If they want to get Springer, they'll offer him a contract that the Celtics cannot even match, and that would make it even difficult for the Celtics. So ultimately, the question does arise is, do they trade Springer? And that's been going on since the beginning of the offseason, starting off and dating back to when the Celtics were contemplating trading him and keeping Lonnie Walker. Now, many teams wanted the Celtics to attach draft capital to Jaden Springer's contract, and if we want to look at the Celtics in playing Jaden Springer so far this season, we can see he's averaging 1 point, 1.2 rebounds, and 20% shooting from the field. Like I said, it hasn't been gifted much time for the Celtics, but what these stats kind of show and indicate is that Springer obviously isn't a guy that teams are going to immediately pounce on and realistically want to go out and grab right away. He has shown impactful moves on the defensive side, like I mentioned, even dating to last season when he was on the Sixers before the Celtics, guarding players like Luka Doncic and Steph Curry, and even on the Celtics team, having some great tenures, guarding some great players as well. Defensively, he's been impactful, but offensively has been able to give that leash to really unleash and unlock himself, similar to what Neesmith was on the Celtics. And I truly think that for both parties, it is pointing to a trade kind of happening, as the Celtics do need some help in that front court and could use some help on that additional wing. And unfortunately, Springer is going to be the contract that is tradable to be able to do that. So let me know what you guys think down below in the comment section. Do you kind of agree with my thinking, or do you ultimately think the Celtics will keep Springer? But let's dive into the next part in the video, which is looking at some possible moves, because with Springer, like I mentioned, the Celtics already have that guard room kind of locked up. They have Jrue Holiday, who has dealt with some injuries in recency and has been on a little bit of a slump on an offensive side so far for the Celtics this year, but still is consistent on the defensive side. And Derrick White has also been consistent for the Celtics on both sides. And Peyton Pritchard has risen up those rankings with the Celtics offensively in that six-man of the year role coming off the bench. So the Celtics are kind of figured out at that guard position. If we look at the wing position, they obviously have Brown, they have Tatum, they have Hauser, who's been a little bit streaky this season, dealing with some injuries. But when he has been healthy, he has been solid and has had some impactful games, having a 20-point game so far with the Celtics versus the Pistons early on, I believe in December. But a player like Jordan Walsh, who was supposed to replace that O'Shea Brissett role, hasn't really broken out into that role. So the Celtics could look for another shooter slash scorer for Sam if he is dealing with these back spasms going on into the playoffs, and or another aggressive rebounder type player. Or the Celtics could also look in that big man group, as we've seen Kristaps Porziņģis already be out with this start the season. Then Kristaps Porziņģis has dealt with some injuries throughout the year now, obviously being sidelined 3 times with injuries and being, or taken out of games, excuse me, not sidelined, but taken out of 3 games since he's returned from injury out of 11 times, which we broke down in yesterday's video. And also talking about how guys like Al Horford's gotten older, Luke Kornet has been able to step up as well, but guys like Xavier Tillman have been able to find their role. So could the Celtics look at another big man? Could they look at another wing? Ultimately, I think those are where the upgrades could be needed to help out on the defensive side and to get this three-point shooting a little bit better. And I truly think the Celtics could find some true gems in this ranking. So we're going to look at some possible moves like I mentioned. First, we're going to be looking at this long list of names. And on this long list of names, Jaden Springer is at the top. Some names to mention or Day'Ron Sharpe, courtesy of the Brooklyn Nets, as he's a guy who's been on the trade market. He's a little bit of a bigger rebounding big, could be a guy to kind of be a solid defensive anchor piece for the Celtics. Dwight Powell is another name listed, but I know I'm not a really big fan of him, and I don't know how many other Celtics fans are big fans of him. 2 names that I found on the list that I think could be some nice bring backs to tie us into Boston would be Daniel Tice, obviously Celtics legend, a guy who could be a solid backup big, maybe that third big for the Celtics here, or Javonte Green, as gritty and grimy small forward who could be an effective rebounder and 3-and-D scorer for this team. Another one that a lot of Celtics fans, including myself, have really eyed on is Torrey Craig, a guy that could really benefit as a 3-and-D wing, and someone that a lot of teams, including the Celtics, are looking to keep an eye on depending on what direction, excuse me, the Chicago Bulls decide to go, if they go to rebuild, if they go to kind of compete. Ultimately, I think all these names are great names the Celtics should keep an eye on. Torrey Craig, Javonte Green, Daniel Tice, Day'Ron Sharpe from the Brooklyn Nets, as they could all be kind of key additions that the Celtics could realistically use. Some rebounding from Day'Ron Sharpe. Maybe the Nets are looking for another dynamic guard to replace Dennis Schroeder, a defensive one to kind of combat the differences of Cam Thomas, excuse me. We want to look at a team like the Bulls if they're looking to reset, looking to rebuild, moving off other guards as well in Javon Carter and those likes. They could get another guy like Jaden Springer to be a defensive replacement, and he's been very good versus them, so they know how good he could be defensively for their team. And ultimately, team like the Pelicans, a team that is battered with injuries, has fallen in the Western Conference, they could look at a player like Jaden Springer to be a little bit of a spark plug, a little bit of an engine to kind of match with Jose Alvarado has brought into their team as well, and could be a nice little mentor to kind of spark Jaden Springer's revival as an offensive player as well in New Orleans. It could just be a little bit of a bright spot for two players in Tice and Javonte Green who don't necessarily have a long-term future in New Orleans, specifically if they are going to reset. But let me know what you guys think down below in the comment section. Ultimately, what you guys think. Like I said, I'm pretty sure in my kind of understanding of this, with Springer kind of getting logged in this system, and with the Celtics ranking up and looking to need some additional help on the wing and big man group, I think a player like Springer could be expendable and is one of those tradable contracts making form and being a restricted free agent that if the Celtics aren't playing him and aren't looking to keep him long term, they could look to make a needed addition. They could also as well look to dump Springer and possibly look to bring up one of their other players as well on the two-way market, as we've seen Drew Peterson play some games. But ultimately, I think an upgrade with an NBA-ready player would be a little bit better for the Celtics in that direction. But let me know what you guys ultimately think down below in the comment section, how you guys feel about this Celtics team. And I'll catch you guys in the next video. Have a great rest of your day, and go Boston Celtics. Peace out, everyone.